Welcome to another episode of the Brain Food Show. I'm Simon, over there, and by over there, I mean literally on the other side of the world.
We should
How many thousands of miles away do you think we are?
We should look that up. And also, like, are we on opposite sides of the world? It's got to be pretty close.
No, I mean, maybe we're like a third of a world away.
No, I bet, because, well, that's true, I guess, because I think, I actually think, like, Dhruv in India is probably more exact opposite.
From you,
yeah,
maybe.
For me.
I'm exactly opposite Australia.
Really?
If I left my home now, I could be at your house, and I'm assuming your house is the city of Seattle, because that's the nearest big city that I could think of.
Sure.
It would be 14 hours and 10 minutes, according to Google Maps, and a distance of, it doesn't tell me. Oh, if I walked? Sorry, we could not calculate walking directions from Prague to Seattle, Washington. So, what are we talking about in today's episode? Unless you've got that distance right there in front of you.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. No, I do not, though. But yeah, I think you're about right. Probably about a third to half the world away.
A third feels right.
Yeah.
If I zoom out on the Google Maps real far, yeah, I reckon a third. Because
India definitely is like I think almost straight through. Because if you rotate the little globe up from India, it's almost straight through for me, I think. So
there you go. For people who don't know, Dhruv is our ad guy who sells our ads. So he's the reason you get little interruptions from companies in these podcasts. But he's great. He makes it all possible.
Exactly. I was just going to say also the reason we can do the podcast.
Absolutely. This is fun. It seems about the same distance. India's probably closer to me than you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think India's like maybe a 8-hour flight, whereas you're further.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Fun times.
Yes.
What's on the docket for today? What are we talking about?
We're going to talk a lot about Monopoly, which is going to be more fun than that sounds. Because, Monopoly is a game. Monopoly. Really, most people hate Monopoly, I feel like.
Well, it always sounds fun, and then you end up hating everyone you play it with. But it is fun while you're playing. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, and we're going to get into why, number one, the two big complaints about Monopoly are, one, you end up just someone flipping over the board and angry. And number two is that it takes forever to finish. And it turns out one of the things is if anyone would ever actually bother to read the rule book, they would see that the game actually shouldn't take very long at all. And some of the things that make people really angry about it are not actually in the rules. It's just it's like these house rules that people have come up with, and then nobody bothers to ever actually, go back and read the rules and be like, oh wait, that's not actually how the game is supposed to be played at all.
Did you know that this is our most popular video on the YouTube channel?
Really?
The one about what's actually supposed to happen when you land on free parking.
Oh, that was from like a few years ago, huh?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's got like 7 million views or something.
No way. That's crazy.
Yeah, let me check that right now.
Yeah. And we'll also, I guess, that'll be coming at the end of this one, but we'll start off looking at sort of why are the game tokens the way they are, like the dog and, the car and stuff. Why did they pick these things? And then we'll also get into who invented Monopoly, and it's not actually who a lot of people say is who invented it. So it's kind of an interesting backstory to it, and then we'll get into the rules that how everyone plays it wrong and stuff.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. The figures on that Monopoly video: 6.57 million views 2 years ago. That's a lot of views.
Yeah, it must still get views then to just keep going. Because I think I would have noticed if we got like 6 million views in a month or something.
Yeah, like we did that video recently about what happens to the bodies after wars. I got like 2.5 million views in 2 weeks. So that does something to your analytics. You notice that?
Yeah, that's surprising because that one is really more of a history piece, and I didn't really think that interesting because it is such a history piece of going different wars and things. And I don't know, people really liked it though. That one surprised. I thought it would do well, but I didn't think it would do something like that.
I thought it would be solidly into 100K, 200K.
Yeah.
I don't think you could really predict 2.5 million in 2 weeks.
But some of them I'm quite confident. Like this one's like a 500,000 view or a million view. I think has a shot at that. But that one I wouldn't have pegged as that because it is long too. That was the other thing. Wasn't it like 15 minutes long or something like that? So
the bodies one.
Yeah.
Don't have it in front of me. But in terms of that Monopoly video, it's still quite popular. 5 comments in the last 24 hours. So that's, I mean, it's not exactly outrageously a large number, but still shows the stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose I could pull up the actual view numbers, but it's more complicated, so I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And we should actually, are we starting off with a quick fact?
We are.
What are you looking at? I see you. We have a video stream going on, so, we can react to each other and wave at each other. And I can see Daywin's deeply looking into something.
Wait for it.
Okay. Is it the distance between you and me? The miles?
No. I was looking. No,
okay.
It's the Dead Bodies one is a 12-minute video, so that is not. Yeah.
I bet the viewer retention's good as well, considering how much exposure it got.
Yeah, and that I was surprised that one. The next day, we also posted how exactly do you prove you're alive if you're declared dead.
How did that do? I would expect that to do well, except for the fact we just had a 2.5 million one.
That one was one I was expecting to be like a 500,000 view one or something like that. And what in fact happened was because it just happened right after the one YouTuber's promoting. YouTube will not promote if they're promoting one video really huge. Just like the rest of your videos that you put out after that, just for a while, just do not go well, no matter how.
Which doesn't seem to make any sense algorithm. Yeah. Like, I don't know why the algorithm does that, but
yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. And so it wasn't best timing to put that one out right after, but it still did all right, 190,000 views. So that's good.
I just got back from VidCon London, and one of the people there was saying, "Yeah, you sometimes if you're doing like really often like daily videos." You have to do some videos that are not going to be popular.
Yeah, it just
because otherwise the algorithm won't like you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's such an advantage of like the people who just release once a week or something, because always that surge is going to have died down by the time the next one comes out. So you can sort of just know, all right, now time to make a new wave. Instead of like us where it's like, oh, this one took off, we should probably reschedule and do like crappy videos for a couple of days just to.
Yeah. It's true, but the people who just have those big videos, they seem to live in fear of, what if this is the one that doesn't take off? What if this one doesn't take off? Because so much of, if you're doing 4 videos a month, and like a quarter of your monthly income relies on like one video and it doesn't do well, that kind of sucks.
Or if like one randomly gets demonetized, like we were at that dinner in Amsterdam when the guy, and he was not pleased with that happening.
Oh yeah. He I think at the time was clocking 500,000 in the first few hours.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, no, it's really important that the monetization gets sorted out pretty sharpish.
Yeah, he left the dinner for a while.
He did. We should talk about Monopoly Man.
Yeah, let's do it. So the player pieces. So it seems a little odd. Why did they pick these things, like a little thimble and things like this, like this kind of random things? And it turns out when Parker Brothers first introduced the game in originally 1935, they actually didn't have any player pieces whatsoever. They just recommended that people just use random stuff like buttons or pennies or whatever they had on hand as the player pieces. So the game didn't actually come with any player pieces at all.
Well, like batteries not included.
Yeah, exactly. And then a little bit later, they started, later in 1935, they started actually, and in the 1936 sets as well, they started just doing wooden player pieces, just cheap little things that kind of look like chess pawns, and just little various ones of those. And so that's what they went with. And then it was finally in 1937 where they came out with the die-cast metal ones that we're all familiar with today, or most of the ones we're familiar with. And these were the original ones were the car, a flat iron, a lantern, a thimble, a shoe, a top hat, and a rocking horse. And then
what's a flat iron?
Iron, like your clothes, when your clothes have wrinkles, what do you call it?
Oh, we just call it an iron.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the flat iron.
I thought maybe it was something specific because I know there's that flat iron building in New York. But that's the only reason so flat iron's just an American way of saying iron.
Well, actually, a lot of people just say iron, but you could say flat iron too.
Flat iron.
Either way.
Thank you for describing what an iron was to me, though.
Yeah. So the and then later they also included a battleship.
Oh, you mean the thing you use after the clothes go in the magical machine that makes them clean?
Yeah. What's that called again?
Yeah.
So yeah, then later the same year they introduced the battleship and the cannon, and then it was actually in the 1950s that they replaced the lantern, the purse, and the rock. I just remembered
I saw an amazing video.
Yeah.
It's by an Australian comedian, and it's about this guy and his wife. And I can't remember what it's called, but if anyone knows what this is, please leave it in the comments where this is a video or whatever. It's amazing. He's like, I think it's a table that clears itself, or like a laundry basket.
Oh yeah,
and he's like, oh no. Just leave it. Just if you put your dirty clothes in the laundry, the magical basket, they appear in your drawers clean. And his wife's like, You know, it's not magical, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was good too. And then his wife leaves him in the end, and he's like, "It's not working anymore. I don't understand."
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
good.
love that video.
Good.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
So yeah, in the 1950s, they replaced the lantern, the purse, and the rocking horse with a dog, a horse and rider, and a wheelbarrow. So that gives us the pieces that, in the standard Monopoly set people are used to today. Obviously, they have like special ones like Star Wars ones and stuff like that have different, but the standard ones. And then later they also did the sack of money. Just that was a result of a fan poll that picked as a new piece. But so why did they pick these weird objects in the first place? And it's often stated that no one actually knows. And while it's sort of true, like definitively, like the exact details of, who first decided to use these, it's actually pretty clear where the pieces came from. So if you go back to, Cracker Jacks, do you know what Cracker Jacks are? Is that a thing over there?
No.
Okay.
Maybe some type of cracker for a chap called Jack.
No, it's actually like popcorn with like caramel covering and peanuts all put in.
Wow, that sounds good.
It is. And
Wait, don't bring me those saltines next time you see me. I want some Cracker Jacks.
No, they are good. And traditionally,
it's a good thing to say as well, Cracker Jack.
Yeah, traditionally they have that company started in the late 19th century, and they also started putting prizes in not long after, like within a decade. So little like toys. Nowadays they get really cheap and just put like little those temporary tattoos and stickers and stuff. But they used to actually put actual little toys in there, just sort of as a selling thing. And so if you actually look back at some of these early Cracker Jack toys in them, they look shockingly similar to the Monopoly pieces. And it turns out the connection, and this is where we can actually say, yeah, this is where Monopoly got it from, is because Cracker Jack hired Tootsie Toy, the company Tootsie Toy, to make these molds for the thing and to produce these little die-cast things, like the car and everything. And if you look at the original, the Monopoly car, and you can look back in the early 1930s, sure enough, there is Cracker Jack's little car that's the exact same car. And it turns out they used the company Tootsie Toy to make them, and Monopoly also contracted with Tootsie Toy to make their pieces once they started doing the little die-cast ones. And so it looks like Tootsie Toy just was like, hey, we'll just use the same molds we're using for Cracker Jack. And so here's the pieces. And so that works. And as far as
smart move, Tootsie Toy.
Yeah. As far as like why the specific ones, why did whoever at Monopoly choose these specific ones? Because they probably got to see what all the molds Tootsie Toy had and got to pick. And so we have one quote from author and game expert John Chaneski, and he's speculating.
He says, I think they chose Cracker Jack prizes that symbolize wealth and poverty. The car, top hat, and dog were all possessions of the wealthy. The thimble, wheelbarrow, old shoe, and iron were possessions or tools of the poor.
Yeah. So it seems plausible anyway.
There you go.
But either way, that part's not known definitively, but it's just us to speculate. But the other, the connection is very clearly there with Tootsie Toy and Cracker Jack and Monopoly. So, yeah.
I think we have those ones as well, but they don't have the bag of money anymore. I don't think there's a bag of money in the Monopolies I've played.
Yeah, I don't think so either, although it's been a long time since I've played Monopoly.
Also, did you know we have different names on the things? Like we have, I'll just start naming random ones. Mayfair, Park Lane, Old Kent Road, the Angel of Islington. They're all London places.
Yeah, and that will actually get into sort of how that came to be in a bit. But yeah, there is a standard, of course, board in America that has like, Boardwalk and these sorts of things. But yeah, the originally
is Boardwalk Mayfair like the most expensive?
Yeah, Boardwalk and Park Place are the most expensive. So
there you go. Where is Boardwalk? It's based on New York. Oh, we'll get into this. We've got this coming up, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to skip ahead then. Today's episode is brought to you by Retail Me Not. Retail Me Not is the ultimate destination for saving money when you shop online or even in a store. They've got thousands of coupons. There's deals, there's cashback offers, there's all of that good stuff. And they make it incredibly easy to save on pretty much everything you need. Thinking about clothing, electronics, even travel. What about restaurants, prescription drugs? Retail Me Not's where it's at. Now, importantly, they have a browser extension, and this, it automatically finds and applies promo codes and cashback offers at checkout. So, when you're browsing online, you might be looking at something, and you're like, oh, I'd like that from Amazon or wherever you're shopping online. You get to the checkout, there's that coupon box, and you're like, I'll give that a quick Google, and maybe you find something, maybe you don't. All of that Googling, all of that time wasting, you don't need to do it with Retail Me Not Genie, because their app, it sits in the background of your web browser. You can install it on, Chrome or Firefox or whatever you're using. All major browsers are supported. You get to that checkout page, and they fill that box for you. So you know that you're getting the best deal. And we had this advert on the YouTube channel as well, and I saw people chiming in and saying like, hey, this actually works. I just saved $10 on my Amazon order. This was great. So yeah, why not? I've also got it installed myself. It's just why not? Who doesn't like saving money? And yeah, it's also free. So there's that. All of that good stuff. You don't have to search for any more deals again. Go install Retail Me Not Genie. Does all the legwork for you. And let's get back to the show. So what's our main... I mean, the quick fact was related because we're talking about Monopoly as the main content, right?
It is. I went with related this time for once.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I do find it strange when I'm recording a video and it'll be like, oh, this topic was about this. And then I think we don't really do it anymore, but sometimes there'll be like a bonus fact. It's like, this is unrelated. This is completely unrelated. And I'm like, what's the connection?
I like that. Like, I like it that connection. Way. But like you, a lot of the people watching and stuff was like, what did that have to do with anything? And they complained. Yeah. So I like the random. It's just like something you didn't expect to learn anything about based on the title.
It's why it's called a bonus fact. It's a bonus. There should be no expectation of it being related. Yeah. But people find that weird.
Yeah, that was the first one of the first things today I found out was one of the first that I know of that actually we did bonus facts. I didn't know of anyone else that was doing them at the time when we first started, and then a lot of different of the interesting fact people started doing it like a year or two later. So that was like a thing I used to tell my authors, like, you have to find bonus facts, like good ones, and they can just be like very loosely related. It doesn't have to, can be like a tangent.
I feel like if you've done the research around a topic, there's usually something that we can really get in, but it's fun anyway.
Yeah, there's always things that it's like, yeah, I could do that, and I could, I don't want to just force it into the article, so I'll just, this is something interesting that I came across, so I'll just add it to the end. So yeah,
it's good for audience retention on YouTube.
Yeah.
So back to Monopoly.
Now,
tell me,
we're going to talk about who really invented Monopoly. So if you go look at like the official account from the company that owns it and stuff, they will say, and many others will say, it was one Charles Darrow who invented Monopoly in around 1933. The height of the Great Depression, he was basically broke and had no way of supporting his family. He invents this game. Within, I think it was like 2 years, it's selling like a couple million copies. And so now he's like a millionaire, seemingly overnight or almost overnight. But it turns out Darrow completely stole the game. Like, it's not even subtly stole it, as we'll get into. There's one thing that even copied the misspelling of one of the property names.
That's how you know you're plagiarizing.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he still is generally given credit. So who actually invented it? And it turns out it was a turn of the century feminist and left-wing activist Elizabeth Maggie. And she was actually just looking to illustrate certain economic concepts of, like capitalism versus not. And this is just what she was trying to illustrate with this game. So,
okay.
Yeah. So to start.
So like playing Monopoly, capitalism is fun.
Yeah. No, it's definitely she was trying to, we'll get into it in a second. So she was the daughter of newspaper publisher and abolitionist James Maggie. And so basically he exposed her to a lot of like, anti-capitalist things and stuff like that. It was very big in their family. Particularly most notable for this Monopoly story is Henry George's 1879 best-selling book. It was called Progress and Poverty. And so this is basically the game that she created 2 games from this, that she just wanted to illustrate the concepts of this book in game form, board game form, because board games were getting really popular in the early 20th century, just as people, were working less hours, getting more pay. And so you had this like rise of the middle class who also had free time. And so board games, this is when board game, before that, it was more like you had like card games and things like this, but like games where you could just...
God, isn't it bizarre to think that just like quite a short time ago, free time was...
Yeah,
didn't we do a video about the 8-hour workday and how the 8 hours work, 8 hours play, 8 hours of rest?
Yeah, that was like a thing to push for, because before that everyone's working like 70, 80 hours or even sometimes 100 hours from like when they're 10, and like no time off at all. So this,
for everyone complaining about how the world is these days,
no, it's nothing.
Go back 100 years, because you do that and then you die of a horrible disease by the time you're 40.
Yeah, even, if you were super wealthy, it was nice, but it's nice now if you're super wealthy. But back then when you're super wealthy, you could still, like you say, you suddenly get like, typhus or something and you die.
I feel like it's been it's always better to be wealthy whichever time you're living in.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I mean, the world's not perfect. I don't want to give that impression or anything that I'm saying that, but I don't feel there's a better time to like not have money, because I'm talking to you on a TV that I bought to connect to my thing. So I have a slightly bigger thing to look at you at. And this TV was, I don't know, it's giant. And it was, I don't know, what's the equivalent in dollars? Maybe $200?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you think about the components and work that had to go into that, and yet it's still so cheap. And just, it's nice. It's a good time to be alive.
It's a good time to be alive.
But
so much time for board games.
Yeah, so they started to get, these board games that would take longer to play, and you could sort of play with the whole family instead of, just like a card games or dice games and stuff that were popular before. And so now you have this real rise in popularity of board games. So she says, I'm gonna create some board games to basically target the middle class to play, and they will just illustrate the concepts in Henry George's 1879 book and sort of as a teaching thing. So she begins working on 2 games. One is an anti-monopolist game and one is a monopolist game, sort of illustrating both sides. And so the monopolist version debuted about 6 years. It was 1903, I think. Yeah, something like 1903 or so. And she patented it she called it originally the landlord's game. And you can see, I'll put a picture up. I'm looking
at the picture right now in the notes. It's very resemblant of Monopoly.
Yeah, it's got you got your jail, you got your tons of stuff with this. So you got your fake money, you got to pay rent, taxes, purchase property, all that sort of thing. You have instead of the Go space, it was called a Mother Earth space, and the same type of thing you get. In this case, you got $100 if you passed it. As you go around the board instead of like $200 with Go. Had public parking, jail. At the corners of the boards, chance cards, the go to jail space, and what happened when you got to jail was similar to the rules nowadays for Monopoly. And like in the modern game, the game ends when only one person has money. So that so Maggie actually has a quote, 1902 quote about her game.
It is a practical demonstration of the present system of land grabbing with all its usual outcomes and consequences. It might well have been called the game of life, as it contains all the elements of success and failure of the real world. There's another one, Game of Life. Have you played that?
No, but I'm familiar.
I remember this also being fun as a kid. And you could make like life decisions like, do you go to college? Do you not? And then it's like, hey, you randomly had a kid. And this was fun.
How'd that happen?
Yeah.
So this landlord's game, she starts producing it with this, there's a New York-based firm, starts producing it, selling it. She's not really looking to make money on it at all. She's just really wanting it to get in people's hands so they can see, Monopoly, this sort of like monopolistic capitalist society thing doesn't really work out except for like one person type of thing. So not good for everyone. So this became super popular, particularly in college campuses and stuff in the Northeast, and just in the Northeast in general, people started playing a lot. And so we actually have one example of Scott Nearing at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a professor there, and then later at the University of Toledo. He actually used to use it in his class, like teaching business and finance and stuff. And it was just something that the students would play in the classes, just sort of illustrate concepts and stuff. And most notable to the Darrow angle that we'll get to in a bit is it was also embraced by the Quakers. Interestingly enough, the Quaker community really loved this game.
What are the Quakers into?
It's just a religious group that into peace. Okay. You can see abolitionists. They were quite progressive in some ways for their time.
Are they the guys who live in Salt Lake City?
No, that would be the Mormons, common name for them. Okay. No, the Quakers, I think.
So many religious groups.
No, totally. The Quakers, though, definitely, if you go look back at some of the stuff, they were way ahead of their time on a lot of the racial equality and equality in general for people and stuff like that. So
cool.
But either way, so within a decade of the launch of the game, there was tons of different versions. People had already coming up with their own rules and stuff, modifications to try to make the game more fun in different ways. Yeah, and so another thing with these different ones was that people also started renaming all the properties to stuff that fit their locality, like we were just talking about, like in Britain and stuff, where you have a different one, different sets of things. And so this was already a thing at this point. People just did that. So, and then by the 1920s, we had various people started, they just started trying to sell the game. as their own or versions of the game. And so we had probably the most popular one one of the more popular ones was Dan Lehman's The Fascinating Game of Finance, which is later called Finance. And I think that one's actually still around. But he tried to patent his version, and then he found out of Maggie's patent, and so he ended up not being able to. But he still was able to sell it because after her patent expired, her patent expired, and then a little bit later, she did create a new version of the game in 1924, and this is critical to something that comes later, which she then patented. And it was just sort of an updated minor modifications and stuff. So she added rules like if you own all the railroads or utilities, you could then charge higher rents and stuff like that.
You have that today, right?
Yeah, that's still around. And another one, this was another significant addition she made, was to introduce, she had these little pieces, little chips that you could do that would then signify that you've upgraded the property. So it was basically the equivalent of the houses and hotels that we have now.
This is beginning to sound a lot like Monopoly.
Yeah, it is. So now we're going to come back to Charles Darrow. So we're fast forwarding to 1932, and Darrow and his wife Esther are over. They're invited to a dinner party over at Oliver and Charles Todd of Philadelphia, and they are Quakers. So the Quakers, again, this game was super popular among the Quakers, and so they had their own little version of the landlord's game. And Todd would later state of this.
The first people we taught the game to after learning it from the Rayfords was Darrow and his wife, Esther. It was entirely new to them. They had never seen anything like it before and showed a great deal of interest in it. Darrow asked me if I would write up the rules and regulations, and I wrote them up and checked with Rayford to see if they were right and gave them to Darrow. He wanted 2 or 3 copies of the rules, which I gave him and Rayford, and kept some myself.
Yeah, so Darrow was indeed broke.
It's a good friend. Like, hey, man, this board game you introduced me to, I need you to write out all of the rules 3 times.
Yeah.
Sure. No problem.
Yeah. And so Darrow was, as the common story goes, he really was broke at this time because the Great Depression was going on and all that, and trying to figure out a way to support his family. So he decides, this is a really fun game. I'm going to start selling it as if I made it. And he actually called it Monopoly. But even that, you think, oh, well, at least he came up with a new name for it. But no, a lot of people were calling it Monopoly at this point. It wasn't just called the landlord's game, and they'd, stuff. So this was a name that was already around. And so he started making handcrafted sets of the game boards, and selling them as his own creation. And if you're actually looking like, okay, did he actually tweak anything or anything like that? And it doesn't seem to be the case. Like he did come up with some artwork, some original artwork for it. And there are some minor rule tweaks from the original Landlord's game, but it's also like he was copying the Quakers version, which already had some rule tweaks. So it's not really clear if he actually came up with these tweaks or if he was just copying, what he saw from the Quakers. And it seems like maybe it was probably just copied from the Quakers because, again, to get into that, Marvin Gardens is misspelled with an I, and that is stuck around when in fact it should have an E, but the version that he got from the Todds had it misspelled. That's fairly that survived. So it doesn't appear that he probably came up with much other than some original artwork for it. So then he's selling it, and it's doing really well. And so then he starts pitching it to big game manufacturers. So like Milton Bradley in 1934, he pitched to them to sell the rights to it to them. They turned it down. They didn't see much use of it. But then come that Christmas season, he got it on the shelves of FAO Schwartz stores. And that had huge sales. And that was enough to convince Robert Barton of Parker Brothers. I think Barton was like the son-in-law of George Parker. Son-in-law George Parker, but either way, they decided Robert Barton, he likes the game, so he's going to buy the rights to the game. And so he pays $7,000 or about $125,000 today, but also Darrow would also get future residuals, royalties for every game they sold. So yeah,
it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it was a good deal. Gets some seed money right away and future royalties. And it turns out within a year they had sold 2 million copies of Monopoly.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so you think at this point, like Parker Brothers is definitely going to get sued, right? They're making tons of money off this thing. But they were one step ahead of the game because they very quickly learned, as the sales skyrocketed, they very quickly learned that, wait a minute, Darrow didn't actually invent this game. This is an existing game. And so
they just cut him a check for like 125 grand.
Yeah, and residuals, and they're selling this game that's doing awesome, but they don't even, they could definitely get sued.
It's not theirs.
It's not really theirs because he never had the right to sell them the rights anyway. So it does appear that they went ahead and kept the contract with Darrow, but then they started making some quite savvy business moves. For instance, they approached Maggie and they said, hey, so her 1904 patent had expired, so they were sort of loosely okay there. But she did have the 1924 patent on her updated version, which they were using elements from as well. So they went ahead and sought her out, and they said, okay, we will buy. And at this point, Maggie does not know about the Monopoly game at all. She's not aware of its existence or their
2 million copies. How could she not be? What was the population back then? Like, not much.
But I don't know. But as you can see from this story, that a lot of the stuff people didn't even know.
I see it in the notes, and I'm like, this is weird that she accepts this tiny. How much was it? Like a few $100s.
So exactly what they do is they approach her and they say, hey, we want to buy your landlord's game, and not discussing Monopoly at all. We would just want to buy the patent rights to the 1924, and we're going to make your game.
That's sketchy.
And naturally, she was quite excited about it, and they offered her a few $100s, which is about $5,000 today, and no future royalties in this case. They weren't willing to give her anything there for the landlord's game. And so she goes ahead and sells it, quite excited. Big company, it wasn't that big at the time, but a company, a game manufacturer wants to make it and produce it. And there's even a quote on it where when they sent her a copy of the landlord's game that they had produced, like the actual landlord's game with the name, and she has a little quote where she calls it the song of her heart. So, the song,
so sad.
The song
they
in my heart
screwed us so hard.
Yeah, they did. And then at the same time, Parker Brothers, because there were all these variants, like the finance game that we mentioned earlier and stuff like that were also around. They started snapping up the rights to a lot of these games as well, just to kind of cover themselves for that as well, just in case. And so then, but then pretty soon, Maggie actually learned about Monopoly soon after she had sold the rights to the landlord's game. And she didn't actually seem to care. Like if you look at the interviews, that the people were making millions off her game, and she was not. But she did want credit. She wanted credit that she made the game, not Darrow. But
I mean, this is if she was originally making this game because she liked the socialist ideals, right? And this kind of stuff. This is a pretty damning indictment of like,
that is.
She's like, or maybe she's just like, yeah, I know you big companies, you scumbags. I already knew this.
Well, and it fits her sort of ideology that she doesn't so much care about the money. She just wants the credit,
True.
For that. She complains about it, and Parker Brothers is like, nope, Darrow made it, because of course they're not going to switch the story. Because also the Darrow angle made a good story. It's like this rags to riches guy, it makes a better story than, some anti-capitalist
socialist
person,
woman,
feminist woman from the early 20th century doing this. So, so they didn't really want it. So they did end up kind of shutting her up because she was kind of going to the press and stuff and talking about it. So they shut her up by agreeing to buy 2 more of her games, which she had Bargain Day and Kingsmen. Neither one did much. And they also agreed to actually go ahead and manufacture the Landlord's game for real, not just send her a copy. But they never marketed it or really anything, so it didn't do well. Because they were obviously just pushing Monopoly. So in 1948, Maggie dies. And at this point, like her side of things just largely got forgotten. And you can look like from there until kind of the 1970s was when it was virtually forgotten. Everyone just went with the Darrow story. And even today, the Darrow angle is largely, a lot of people still say he invented it and kind of give his story. But
you said this was official? Like this is still their official line?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so sketchy.
Yeah, but the things, finally, Maggie kind of resurfaced in 1973 when Parker Brothers was in a legal battle with one Professor Ralph Anspach over his game called the Anti-Monopoly game, which, of course, I don't know if this game was actually a derivative of Maggie's. If it was, the Anspach didn't seem to know it. But either way, so they were in the legal battle, and it was Anspach's lawyers who uncover Maggie's patents to the anti-monopoly game and the monopoly game, or her landlord's, what she called it. So they kind of discover this, and then it gets out in the press, and of course then the real story of how Monopoly actually came about gets revealed, and that Darrow in fact was not the inventor of the game. He mostly just copied it and some variations of the rules that came with the Quaker Communities version of the landlord's game. So
you can still buy this anti-Monopoly game today.
Really?
It looks very much like regular Monopoly.
Huh, I wonder what the rule differences are and stuff. That might be.
We could play it, do a live stream.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy these live stream board games. This is interesting. It doesn't get very good reviews though.
No.
6.2.
Well, because people like to make a lot of money and stuff, and it was like giving money away or something, or sharing.
Yeah. Please.
It's much more fun to ruthlessly crush your opponents.
And by opponents, I mean fellow family members.
Yeah. So this all brings us around. So
I'm gonna order that anti-monopoly game.
Awesome. Yeah. So this brings us around.
Do you play board games? I really love board games. I play a lot. I used to play more, but I play as much as I can.
I used to play a lot, but now it's been, I don't know, probably like a decade since I really played board games at all. Other than like Trivial Pursuit, as you might imagine, I'm pretty good at that one. Unless it's the pop culture ones, I suck at those. So those questions, they're awful.
Oh yeah, this is why I was wondering if I'd be really good at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because we've done so much stuff.
Oh yeah,
and then I played it online, and I was like, okay, a lot of the stuff we do is American focused. Yeah. So I'll try the US Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Yeah. And then as soon as any sports question comes up, it's not baseball, because we do stuff about baseball, which I don't. But still, even if something comes up about that, like who won the Super Bowl, the baseball bowl? Yeah. I don't even know what this is called. Yeah. The Super Bowl of baseball, the World Series?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm sure that'd be a $100 question that I get right. But anything along those lines, it's like, okay, I lose all of my money.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what any pop culture, unless it has to do with like music from like 2000 or before, anything after 2000, I'll probably not do well on.
Yeah. Same. I was like, so I heard the name Cardi B about 6 times in the last 2 days. Just mentioned on a podcast, then I saw something on BBC News, and I was like, who is this Cardi B woman? I have no idea who that was. Yeah. But if you want to ask me about alternate rock from 1995 to maybe 2003, I'm your man.
Exactly. But in any event, coming back to Monopoly and the rules. So how is everyone playing it wrong? What are the rules that are actually there instead of the common ones? So actually Hasbro, which now owns the rights, I'm not sure if just in the US or worldwide distribution rights, it varies from game to game. I can't remember on Monopoly, but either way, they actually, a lot of these house rules are so popular. They have actually started putting like a house rules in the rules, where it's like a separate thing. Like if you want to just play with these different rules, but it turns out these different rules often make the game much worse and much more, it takes longer and, gets people angry and stuff, as we'll get into shortly. So to begin with, the most popular tweak is free parking. When like, what do you usually do when free parking, like when you play it?
I know I'm not supposed to. Because we made a video that got like 6 million views about it. I haven't played Monopoly in many years, but we would put 500 Monopoly money in the center at the beginning of the game. And then whenever someone takes it, you put another 500 in. And also all of the fines and taxes go into the into the center.
It is so amazing because that is exactly how I've always played it. And you in the UK, that's exactly, and that's nowhere in the rules is that a thing. Like it's just not a thing. And yet across the world, this is how everyone plays it. And it turns out that's going to make the game take longer, because now you're giving players a lot more money and stuff, or a certain player that lucky enough to land on. The actual thing is nothing is supposed to happen when you land on free parking. It's just a place to land your piece, and nothing happens. None of those tax dollars. Anything.
But that's boring.
Yeah. It's not.
I don't want my tax dollars to actually go to the government. I want to have the chance of them being redistributed to me.
Yeah. But then you can't see distributing more money like that is just going to make the game take longer, because people aren't going to go bankrupt as well.
And remove a ton of skill.
Yeah. This is the thing. Most of the rules changes, the house rules that people do, it removes all the skill and makes it more of a game of chance, just like the roll of the dice, like where are you going to land? Whereas in the original, there is actual some strategy. There's quite a bit of strategy with how you're doing things, as we'll get into more in momentarily. So next one up. So another one, when people commonly play, where you have to go around the board once before anyone can start buying properties. And that
I don't play that. Do you play that?
Yeah, I'd always played that as well. It was sort of like you always wanted to roll high at first, so you can sort of get a chance to buy properties first, which again, we'll get into in a minute, is also, it shouldn't take long for all the properties to be bought up the way you're actually supposed to play it, but no one does. But this one, just going around the board once, it's not a thing. That's not supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to buy properties right away. And so
it's a waste of time.
Yeah. And so this is the other thing. Most people play it so that when you land on a space, You have the rights to buy that property if it's not purchased by someone. And that's it. You can either choose to buy it or you can not. And if you choose to buy it, you just snap it up, or you can just leave it. And then it's the next player's turn. But this is kind of boring for all the other players because they have nothing to do when it's your turn and you're just deciding. But it turns out if you choose not to buy that property, every single player, including yourself, then the property goes up to auction and you all bid on it if anyone wants it. And then the high bidder gets it. So every player has the option to buy it if you land on it and choose not to. And so that you can see quite quickly, all the properties on the board should get snapped up because, players going around instead of having to just this chance roll of the dice thing all the time where every player, has to eventually land on all the spaces and then decide to buy it before then, things start moving forward. This should happen quite quickly because of this auction system that is supposed to take place.
That sounds fun. Why is that? I feel like that should be reintroduced.
No, and it adds an element of strategy because you could want the property, but maybe I don't want to pay, whatever it is. So maybe
So do you open it up to the risk of losing it to save a few bucks?
Yeah, or and then of course the auctioners, people auctioning on it, how much do they actually want to pay for it? That's also some strategy there of budgeting and looking at what else they might want to target and things like that. So it adds a bit of strategy to the game. Right there. And of course,
we should play Monopoly when we next meet.
Yeah, like the real way too.
Yeah.
Because I have never played it this way with it, and it sounds way more fun and faster.
This is the thing. It just sounds like it'll be over in an hour or two rather than like the 7-hour epic that Monopoly becomes.
Yeah, or like if that spans multiple days because no one has time to just sit down all that time and play it. Yeah, so that speeds it up. And so then another one that's different is when a player goes bankrupt. So you are supposed to get all that player. So the player goes bankrupt, they owe you money. You're supposed to then get all that player's remaining assets. And then a minus they are required before you get that. They have to sell back their houses and hotels and stuff, which we'll get into why that's the case because of another thing that everyone does wrong. So that they have to sell their back stuff, but you still get the money for that. So you get all their stuff. But in actual practice.
Wait, you have to repay any debts to the bank and then the rest of it goes to the person who bankrupted you?
So you go bankrupt. Now you have to sell back any buildings and stuff to the bank. This is important because of another rule, like the reason they do this. And then the player who bankrupted you have to give them all your money basically, and your and all that. So what actually most people do is they just turn over the properties to the bank, that sort of thing. And then if someone else lands on it, then they have the option to buy it. But of course, again, even if that was the case, everyone should then have the opportunity to auction if the person chooses not to buy it. But either way, what's actually supposed to happen is the bank gets all the properties, right? And then there's supposed to be this auction that happens where everyone gets to bid on these properties, right?
Okay. Like all of them at once?
Yeah, exactly. So all the properties there, so no one has to go and land on them at all. It's just now these are bankrupt properties. Now we auction, and the one person gets the money for it.
Hang on. But if I've bankrupted someone, why don't I get their properties as settlement of the debt?
The rules?
No, hang on. I think that only happens if you've been bankrupted by the bank.
Oh, okay.
If you've been bankrupted by taxes, then this is what happens. But if I've bankrupted you, you have to give me all of your stuff. That was my reading when I was looking through this. I could be wrong because you do much more research and I just glance over it.
No, let me look at the notes real quick. I might be remembering wrong. Yes, you are correct. That only the properties go to the person, and then the bank then gets it if it's the bank that does it, and then if the bank does it, then you can then the auction occurs where everyone can buy any of the properties. No one has to land on them, and so you can just go through all of them. So then they quickly get redistributed to everyone.
And that makes sense.
Yes.
Because if I bankrupt you, I want your stuff because you owe me like the 2,000 Monopoly dollars because you landed on Mayfair.
Yeah, this is funny because like that was when researching this one in the first place, like Carl and I both actually read through the entirety of the rules just to see all the ones that people don't do. And it was kind of interesting because I'd never read the rules for Monopoly and there was a lot of stuff that was different.
Because you just learn it from your grandma.
Everyone does that. No one bothers to read the rules because everyone knows how to play Monopoly just because they learned it from someone who actually also doesn't know how to play Monopoly.
Doesn't know how to play Monopoly.
Yeah. I will say, I think like the app version of that is starting to change that because the app version actually has, usually they have the actual real way or you can play by the house rules ways. And so people kind of see.
You are right.
Yeah.
I remember having the Monopoly game on an old Scion Organizer. Do you remember those things? Those computers that would like follow. And there was a Monopoly app. And this thing, it would do the auction. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. So another one, most people, when you land on Go, will just give you like double. They'll give you $400, but that's not a thing at all. You're just supposed to get 200 if you land on it or pass it. It doesn't matter. The 400 thing is just a thing people do. Another thing that's distributing more money to people to make the game last longer.
And distributing money to people based on chance and not skill.
Yeah, and the rule book next up on giving loans to other players says the rule book.
That's not going to be allowed, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, there's a quote for me to read on. Money can be loaned to a player only by the bank and then only by mortgaging property. No player may borrow or lend money to another player. See, now that's gonna make this game a whole lot better.
Yeah, because this is where the big fights always come in, is when, two people might team up or they'll all loan you some money and then this sort of underhanded thing, and then someone else is like, well, why don't you loan me some money? And then it's like a whole,
we don't like you.
Yeah, and we're both teaming up on you right now. And so this is how fights start and boards get flipped over and stuff. And you're just not supposed to be able to do that.
I think we're doing a service to siblings around the world right now.
And
explaining all of this.
Saving people a lot of time, because the Monopoly is going to go much quicker when they play and be more fun. This version of the game sounds a lot more fun than the one that takes like 10 hours and, all that. So
we could play both versions. We could play House Rules and then do Monopoly as it's actually supposed to be played.
Yeah, and so another one. So what's supposed to happen when you land in jail is a little bit different. So the official rules state,
even though you are in jail, you may buy and sell property, buy and sell houses and hotels, and collect rents. Now, I used to play, if you were in jail, you're in jail. You got to roll to get out, and people who land in your properties, you're safe and sound.
Yeah, but that's not the way it's supposed to. You're supposed to actually be able to earn income, which makes going to jail really awesome.
Going to jail is good, yeah.
Especially in the later parts of the game. So that's just a good thing. And significantly there, you can still buy and sell property, which in the way that most people play, where you have to land on something, you can't do that when you're in jail so early in the game. It's like, oh, it's not good to go in jail. But in the auction system, it's actually not necessarily that bad at all, because you can still auction and buy stuff. And like in real life, if you're rich and in jail, it's not, you can still make money. That sort of
Tell that to Bernie Madoff.
Yeah. So now we're coming to the houses and hotels. So it's supposed to be, no one I know plays it this way, but there are a finite number of houses and hotels, which is why these things have to be auctioned back to the bank and stuff. So you're supposed to...
I never used to add stuff. We used to, if you're out of houses, you're out of houses.
Really? I always played it where we would just use like random other pieces or houses from another board game or whatever. But so it's supposed to be 32 houses, 12 hotels. That's it. Once it's run out, there's no more for anyone to buy. And so you have to sort of,
You've got to, because we used to, the big motivation was if you were super rich.
Yeah.
And there were like 4 players or whatever with houses. One of the big motivations was to bankrupt another player so the houses would go back into the thing and you can start buying them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so but when you do it with the unlimited number, it's just like people just continually until every space has a hotel on it. And then it's just, then again, it is just a game of roll the dice and then hope I don't land on this thing. Whereas this version, where there's a finite number, is actually got some more strategy. And not only because of there's a finite number, but it actually, once the houses and hotels start to become scarce and they run out, the rules actually state,
if there are a limited number of houses and hotels available and 2 or more players wish to buy more than the bank has, the houses or hotels must be sold at auction to the highest bidder.
Yeah, so it becomes now there's also like a bidding war for these when the resources become scarce, which also makes it a little more strategy. And because there is a finite number on the board, it becomes a little bit less of it. I mean, there's always the chance, the roll of the dice thing, but it becomes less of a game of the roll of the dice when.
But hang on, don't you get to buy houses and hotels at the beginning of your turn? So surely it's just a matter of whose turn is next. How can 2 people be trying to buy houses at the same time? Because the rules probably don't state that at the beginning of your turn is when you buy houses. You can probably just buy houses whenever you want, I'm guessing.
Yes, I think I have that in the notes somewhere, but let me just look real quick. But I do remember that being a thing where you can buy them.
Which, again, makes the game more fun because then it gives players something to do when it's not their turn.
Mm-hmm. I didn't put that in the notes, but I vaguely remember, but I could be wrong. But that would make more sense.
It seems to be the only way that it could make sense.
Yeah, because there's no other...
If this is in the official rules, then the way we've played doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's no way for 2 players to bid at the same time. So yeah, that...
Oh, we screw Monopoly up in ways we're not even aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, and so after they're all gone, you have to wait until someone bankrupts and returns houses and hotels to the bank, or you can also, if people need money, they can sell it back at half the original price if they just need some cash.
See, that was new to me. I didn't know that. I thought if you sold a house, you'd sold it at the amount you bought it for.
Yeah, that is also the way I've always played it, but it's supposed to be half.
Because then it's like, just use all your money to buy houses, of course.
Yeah, but no, in this way, you only get you get the depreciating value of the thing when you give it back.
Wow. That's like a 2008 style housing market.
Yeah. Yeah, and also if you want to sell a property or auction it off to other players, it turns out you have to first return all your hotels and houses as well to the bank for the half cost, and so you can't sell it with hotels on it or whatever. Which I don't know. I don't remember if I've ever played it that way or not, or if you just sold it with the stuff that was on it.
Wait, if you were bankrupted or if you just wanted to sell it?
Yeah, if you just wanted to sell or auction your property to other players.
Oh, yeah.
Then
so you had to take all the houses off it first.
Yeah, that is the way the rule is supposed to be. I can't remember if that's
you couldn't mortgage a property with houses on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
that's correct, right?
Yeah. One thing that kind of sounds like it's a house rule, but it turns out it's not. Is that if you land on someone's property and no one notices, the official,
you don't have to pay.
Yeah, the official rules say the owner may not collect the rent. So that seems like it would be a house rule, but like just something like trying to get away with. But no, that is an actual official rule. If they don't notice and the next person rolls the dice, then that's it. They don't have to pay. So they can't.
I wish that was the case when I was like renting property.
Yeah.
It's like the landlord he hasn't reminded me to pay this month. So I guess I just don't have to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. It turns out a similar one. So Scrabble, moving over to Scrabble, which is also a Great Depression era game that came out. So it is.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
It is entirely legal to play a totally made up word, and you can get away with it potentially. And that you think, the potential risk here in the official rules is that you lose your turn if someone challenges it and then it's discovered that it's not really a word. And so you might think like, oh, this will be something people will just always challenge if you do a word that kind of sounds like it's not really a word. But it turns out there's risk, and this is a rule that a lot of people don't know about. There is risk to the person challenging, because if you challenge the word and it turns out to be a valid word, then it depends on the region where the game is made, but you can either, it's common to lose like 5 points, or you lose your next turn. The challenger loses a turn for challenging and being incorrect. And so you're not necessarily going to always challenge something that seems like it's probably a made up word. And so a lot of people don't play it that way. They're just like, oh, that's not a word. Let's look that up.
If you've got nothing, like that's a fairly good strategy. And I also like this because my vocabulary is far weaker than my ability to bluff.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of people, I mean, I don't know anyone that does that second part where everyone just like, oh, that's not a word. Let's look it up. And it's not, a lot of people I feel like don't really know that there are actually rules governing this.
There's consequences of your actions.
Yeah. If you actually say, no, I'm challenging that word. If you're wrong. So yeah, it adds a little bit of strategy to Scrabble.
That sounds like it would make Scrabble a lot more fun.
Yeah. And we're going to cover Scrabble at some point. I don't know if like right away, but I definitely want to do some more board games because there's some interesting stories and stuff behind some of these. And Scrabble is one that has got a quite interesting origin. And so,
have you played Secret Hitler?
No, I have not.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah.
If you get some friends around, play some Secret Hitler. It's a good time.
I'm not even.
It's a real good time. It's the best game I've played since Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, what do you do in it? What is like the?
You have to get Hitler elected. It's not quite so simple. There's like two teams, the fascists and the liberals, and you're secretly given a card, and you have to either, if you're a liberal, you have to stop Hitler becoming Chancellor of Germany, or if you're a fascist, you have to work to get Hitler elected Chancellor of Germany. The game ends with either Hitler being assassinated, the liberals taking power, or Hitler becoming Chancellor.
That's hilarious.
It's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
And I had some friends around to play it like a few months ago, and it gets late at night and you're playing this game and you're getting so loud. Everyone's like shouting at each other. And it's like, it stirs passions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an
fun. Exceptional game.
Sounds fun.
It's very good.
So yeah, that's basically the rules I wanted to go over. And that is why the game of Monopoly takes way too long and is not nearly as fun as it should be if people would just bother to actually read the rules.
Next time on the Monopoly podcast.
Yeah.
This is, I could talk about board games a lot. Monopoly, I enjoy this.
Yeah.
So that's the main content. That's what we're
Yeah. And now we have some follow-up. We're finally going to get around to, do horses actually sleep standing up, or do they
hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Let's make people listen to some great reviews for our podcast.
Okay.
Before because I want to be a professional podcaster, and I want to let people know that we read exactly. You got to tease it. I should have had these in front of me. I'm looking it up right now. We have 296 reviews.
Oh wow.
I think we should. We're giving away a $300 Amazon gift voucher when we get to. It's been a bit slow getting up to 300. Well, so this contest has been going on a while.
It doesn't help that we've been not publishing at all lately.
We have been fairly spotty.
But that's coming around. One more week, I'll be all moved, and then I can start to have some semblance of a schedule that's not random.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
I've got one here. The first one. It's a 4-star, and I'm going to be fair and equal, and I'm going to read it. It says, I've been watching To Death and Out on, and thank you to BA Assassin for this, or Bat Assassin. I've been watching To Death and Out on YouTube for a while now, so it's only natural for me to start listening to this podcast. It's by far the best podcast I've found. Where's my 5 stars then? Come on. If this is better than all of those Gimlet shows and NPR, as you say, or maybe he just hasn't found those because those are very good. You should also subscribe to those, dear listener. And then I'm learning a lot from it. The only reason I haven't given you 5 stars is because of the shocking amounts of great movies that Simon hasn't seen.
So
that's on me, I suppose.
Yeah, totally.
Although we've both you haven't seen The Godfather, right? Apparently that's quite good.
No interest in that. But you definitely should watch The Princess Bride because it is great. I think I've never heard of anyone who doesn't like that movie. It's just not a thing.
How about this one? This is genuinely the next, there's a 5-star review, which I'm just going to skip over, but thank you, Keylorn, for it. I'm going to read it actually, because then people will think I just read the bad reviews, and we don't want that, because then they'll leave bad reviews.
Yeah.
Cleehorn says, this is a great podcast, always full of random facts. Goes on slight tangents once in a while, but I love it. This one, 3 stars. Pretty, and I do feel like these are, we have had an unfortunate run of 4-star and 3 stars because there's 2 of them here. Whereas generally we have 460 ratings, 427 of them are 5, 21 are 4, and then 4, 5, 3 all the way down. Mm-hmm. So pretty okay.
Pretty okay.
Pal 27, 3 stars. I like this podcast, but I'm only giving it 3 stars because Simon threw a shade at Pink Floyd. Simon, if you're reading this, The Wall is one of the greatest albums of all time.
So what we're learning from
you
this,
could drop it down to 3 stars. The Wall is not one of the greatest albums of all time. The Wall is a piece of.
I enjoyed it, but what I'm learning from these reviews is that you are responsible for all our bad reviews.
I have to say, I probably I like to turn it up a bit for the podcast because I if The Godfather was on, I'd probably watch it. If Princess Bride was on, I'd probably watch it. If The Wall was playing, I'd be like, oh, this is actually all right.
Yeah.
But all I remember, I don't know if I've even listened to The Wall all the way through, but that it's just another brick in the wall.
Yeah.
Shut up, Pink Floyd.
See, I used to always, I had a, when I worked at the video store in college, I had a person I worked with who would always just put it on. It's just nice to have background music instead of the movies. He had there was some sort of live concert version of it. It was quite good.
Yeah.
I used to enjoy listening to it. Quite relaxing when you're working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've maybe I should listen to the whole thing, but then I'm worried that I'll just end up killing myself.
Yeah.
So it's risky.
Yeah.
It's risky. Tell me about some horses. I've upset enough people.
Yeah.
We've got some more bad reviews coming our way.
So yeah, the horses, do they sleep standing up?
Haven't we been trying to figure this out for 6 episodes?
Yeah, I finally decided to go ahead and take the time to look it up. So are they doing that, or are they just seeming like they're asleep a little bit like cows, where they're kind of sleeping but not really? And it turns out the horses are a little bit like the cows in this way. They're definitely in sort of a sleep-ish state, but they're also pretty aware of what's going on around them. They're easily startled. Basically, it doesn't take much to snap them out of it. And it's not really a deep sleep state. So we have one doctor's. Oh, and they also do to answer another question: do they actually lock their knees when they're doing this standing up sleep thing? It turns out they do, and so we have a little quote from Dr. Sue McDonald of the Equine Behavior Lab at the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, and she states,
"That's a mouthful." She says, sort of internal hammock, a system of tendons and ligaments called the stay apparatus. The system lets him lock his legs in position, so, unlike you, he can relax his muscles and doze off without keeling over. Even when he's not sleeping, he uses the stay apparatus to rest muscles and reduce fatigue. I would like this.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty handy,
with
like
only
for standing up for a long time.
Yeah, it would be nice. I'm not sleeping, of course, but standing up, yeah, it would be nice. But of course, for us, because with only the 2 legs, we'd have a tendency probably just to fall over. When with 4, you can be a little more stable and whatnot without having to do much. But yeah, so they are sort of sleeping in this state, this standing up state, but it's definitely that sort of light dozing thing. And they actually need more than that. So they need to do a deep sleep state, which they need about 3 hours of per 24 hours or so. They don't strictly need it. They can go actually for quite a long time without this. For various reasons, and so they do need it, and so they'll usually just lay on their side and to get the REM sleep and the deep sleep, and so so it turns out there's various reasons why this is good for them to be able to have that sort of light restive slate and be able to also endure, like if they need to, a few days in a row or whatever without getting the deeper sleep. So it's basically just sort of a defense mechanism. So they're herd animals for usually in the wild would just be in like fields and things like this. And so it's not really the best, they're quite prone for predators. And so they'd rather not just be laying on their side on the ground and a predator sneaks up and, attacks them. They'd rather be in a standing state and being very, or at least somewhat alert. And so they can, instantly spring and just like run off because they're really fast. So it turns out they do not do this deep sleep for very long at a time. So even though they need about 3 hours or so a day, what they'll do is just like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, just like they'll lay down, get that little sleep in. They can sometimes do it for a couple hours at a time, but they won't want to do more than this because they actually have really poor circulation, and also the laying down on their side puts a lot of extra internal pressure on their organs and stuff, and it turns out to be really bad for them if they do that for too many hours in a row. And so it's usually just like a quick
seems like a design flaw.
Yeah. It's usually just like a quick little thing. They'll get their little deep sleep, then they'll stand up, kind of graze, walk around a little bit, and then might do the standing rest if they need to. And so that also the walking around and stuff helps their leg muscles and stuff help the circulation to their legs and things like that as it's contracting. And humans are the same way. This is one of the reasons why when you stand in place, kind of your muscles actually moving and walking actually helps your kind of not that blood not sort of pool in your legs as much. So it actually sort of gets the fluids going around a little better. And so that's one of the reasons why you feel so fatigued when you're standing in place versus just walking. And it's just that the blood pooling and that sort of thing. And then of course, if you lock your knees, you can actually, pass out for various reasons.
You can?
Yeah, this is like a thing because it is just the blood in your legs and not circulating. And then you can pass out eventually. It's one of the reasons why if you're ever giving speeches and stuff, they that's like a tip is don't just stand there stock still because,
God, that'd be embarrassing.
Yeah.
You just just giving a talk, it's all going fine, and then you just pass out.
Yeah, because your heart rate's a little higher because you're in front of people and stuff like that. So it's just a thing. So, but yeah, either way.
Pro tip.
Either way, so the horses, they don't lay down much, and this is also good, of course, for predators to not be on the ground too much. And it turns out if you watch horses, especially in a herd, that if they're in like an environment that they seem like they're a little anxious or whatever, or they don't seem to think it's too safe, they will actually skip this laying down sleep altogether until they can find a place where they feel comfortable, and they'll just do the standing sleep just as sort of a defense mechanism. They're kind of somewhat alert and standing, ready to take off running. And another interesting thing is if you watch them in a herd, even when they do feel safe, most of the horses will all lay down and go to sleep, and then one or more, usually just like one or two horses, will remain standing in the standing sleep, and then periodically one of the other horses that's in the laying state will get up, and then they kind of trade off and this sort of thing.
They're like on watch.
Yeah, so there is just someone watching. I mean, they're in that sort of like light sleep state, but they're a little more alert than the ones who are in the deep sleep. And so if they and even the horses laying down, they wake up pretty easily compared to like a human in a deep sleep or whatever. But it's still when they're in the light resting sleep, they're a lot more alert. So yeah, this is what horses do, and yeah, so they do sorta sleep standing up, but not like a deep sleep type thing. But
I'm very satisfied with that answer. Thank you.
Yeah,
that was good. Is that it for today?
That is it for today.
This was nice.
Yeah,
this was nice. If you're listening, why not leave us a review? Don't base your review on my music and film taste, though, because I'm less than agreeable when it comes to music and film. I could make a list of albums that I think are masterpieces that most people probably think are real pieces of crap.
Oh no,
I'm
on the same page there, because I can honestly say like my favorite movies of all time would be on zero people's lists. Like it is like maybe like the mother of the director might say that that's their favorite movie, but that's about it. No one else. Probably not even the director.
We both have a deep passion for Star Trek First Contact, though.
Yeah, that's
we all know is one of the greatest movies ever made.
That one's an exception. That one's awesome and should be people's favorite
amazing
movie.
And it's well reviewed.
Yeah. So what would you say? What would you say is your favorite movie of all time then?
It used to be American Beauty, but then that took on a whole different message with Kevin Spacey's general revelations. American Beauty is definitely up there.
Really?
Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Contact. Lost in Translations, another favorite of mine.
I've never seen that one.
A lot of Wes Anderson movies.
Mm-hmm.
The Darjeeling Limited. Anything with Bill Murray, it's got to get up there pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say those are a few of my favorites.
Yeah, I definitely would think that's probably not a list most people would come up with.
What, that? American Beauty won the Oscar, like it won 2 Oscars.
Yeah, but like a favorite movie, I don't know. I do think some people.
Dude, I think a lot of people would have American Beauty as one of their favorite movies
on their list, I suppose. Yeah. Well,
or Lost in Translation.
Yeah, I've not actually seen that one, but I've heard people like that one a lot.
Oh, that is a good movie.
Yeah.
That is a good movie.
Yeah.
I'm sure. What else I really like? I feel there's. I'll come back to you on this one.
Yeah, that's good.
Tell me about. Well, now you got to tell me yours because
absolutely,
like they're so terrible.
No, I mean,
let's encourage some 2-star reviews.
Yeah, this one, Meet Joe Black, is probably these 2 movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't this like the most forgettable 90s movie ever made? Like, I'm fairly sure I've seen it, but I remember nothing about it. Wasn't he a ghost?
Yeah, kind of. The 2 that are my top are 2 that like I think, oh yeah, that's all right. And then I watched them and I was like, that is an amazing movie. I love that movie. And it's Meet Joe Black and then Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, if you really, because I've like know no one else who likes. Everyone else is like these 2 movies. Both of those movies are like put you to sleep fast type movies, but I love both of those movies. They're amazing.
Is the Bicentennial Man's the one where he's trying to become a human the whole time, right?
Yeah.
No, this was great.
No, and he was amazing in that movie. And I think that was one of his earlier ones where he was taking a serious role rather than a comedy. Yeah, great movies, I feel like. And then probably like the next up would probably like It's a Wonderful Life, which actually a lot of people probably like that one.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I like it a lot.
I feel only Simon will feel good about Bicentennial Man, but would never seen A Wonderful Life.
Yeah, I will say Meet Joe Black. There's like 2 or 3 songs from the soundtrack, which is kind of variations of the same thing. Amazing songs. They're just instrumental. Thomas Newman, I think. He has a lot of good. He has a lot of good stuff. If you look,
he did the American Beauty soundtrack.
Did he? Because he has so much good stuff. And there's look it up.
I want to watch Bicentennial Man again. Wow, 20 years old. Did you know that?
Really?
How crazy is that?
No, wait, Thomas Newman also did Revenge of the Nerds.
I don't think I've seen that. Huh. I'm sure there's some good movies. Oh, hang on. You know where you can find these? I bet 10 years ago on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really use Facebook anymore. But they'll list your what your favorite movies were back in the day. Let me see.
Yeah, so Meet Joe, you're right. American Beauty. He has so many good songs from his Road to Perdition. It's got great. Oh, Finding Nemo too. The Lemony Snicket ones, that's the series of unfortunate events. I don't actually like that movie at all. I like elements of it, but I didn't the way they did it. But that he has a couple little themes from that movie that just like make the movie worth watching just to listen to the music part of it.
Thomas Newman's very good. The American Beauty soundtrack I like. I will check out Meet Joe Black.
Yeah, you can definitely hear it once you hear a lot of his stuff. Like he he repeats a lot of the same kind of variations on the same stuff in a lot of his stuff, but it's really good. Oh, Shawshank Redemption, another one that has a great soundtrack.
That's a good movie.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, here's a couple of movies, which we talked about before. Back to the Future.
Yeah. Great.
Absolute winner.
Yeah.
That's up there. The American Psycho, that's also up there for me.
Oh, I've not seen that.
And then American Beauty and Lost in Translation are the movies on my... for some reason, Back to the Future's on there twice. Oh, and Back to the Future 2. Yeah. So 2 Back to the Future movies, not 3. And American Psycho, American Beauty, and Lost in Translation. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Yeah.
Great movies.
Yeah.
Great movies.
So you should watch Meet Joe Black and then put yourself to sleep. The last person I recommended Meet Joe Black to, I literally said, this is going to put you to sleep. And I kid you not, within 10 minutes, she was asleep. Like out completely. And it was hilarious. But it worked. So that was funny.
But it's a good movie.
No, I love everything about that movie. The soundtrack, everything about it. So, Anthony Hopkins is amazing in it. All the actors, even the minor characters, just nail their parts. And yeah, it's great.
I'm going to check it out. I'm going to call it a day there. Got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
Good to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
I will suppose our next recording will be after you've moved house.
It will be. So it might be a little delay, but people should be used to that by now.
They most definitely are used to that.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you when I talk to you then.
All right.
Bye. Smart move, Tootsie Toy.